Welcome to another X4 series, where we'll compare different small weapons for and against fighters controlled by the AI, and show how effective they are in low and high attention mode. Since I currently don't have the time to compare all weapons to each other in one huge project, I decided to compare them step by step and update you on a regular basis, which I think is better than maybe some information in just 1 or 2 months. For this I decided to go through the order in which they are listed in the weapon outfit screen. Accordingly, the first two weapons I compare in this video are the Beam Emitter and Blast Mortar. So let's get a first impression of these first two weapons. The Beam Emitter projects a red beam on its target, which hits instantly up to a distance of 3 kilometers, making the weapon a very accurate choice, which compensates for the low weapon output. The prices for the MK1 and MK2 variants compared to other MK1 and MK2 variants, respectively, are in the lower range. The price increase from the MK1 to the MK2 variant outpaces the weapon output increase, which makes the MK1 variant likely the more money-efficient variant. The Blast Mortar shoots large, red projectiles at its targets, which are moving relatively slow at 1440 meters per second, compared to other fighter weapons. The projectiles explode when hitting a target or reaching their maximum flight distance of 3.3 kilometers, leaving a black smoke cloud behind, which reminds me about the flag explosions like they were common in World War II. Personally, I find these clouds very cool because they are making the battlefield more alive. The price of the Blast Mortar is in the medium range. The price jump from the MK1 to the MK2 variant I find interesting, because the cost only increases by the factor of 1.4, while the firepower increases by the factor 1.95. By this, the Blast Mortar is the only small fighter weapon where the weapon performance increases larger than the price increase, which makes me excited to see how the MK1 and MK2 Blast Mortars perform against each other. The weapons test I will perform with the Terran Gladius. It is not the most price-efficient ship, but since it's a Terran ship, it can mount all weapons in the game except the Boron weapons. This makes it easier to compare all weapons to each other because I can keep the test platform for most tests. Since the most common scenarios are that we want to buy either a certain amount of ships or we have only a certain budget to buy ships from, I will test fleets of 19 Gladiuses with different loadouts against 16 Xenon M and afterwards repeat the test with the same loadouts, but reduced fleet sizes depending on the loadout price, so that each fleet is equally expensive. The tested loadouts will only vary in the weapon type used. For the test, I will accordingly test both MK1 and MK2 variants of the Beam Emitter and Blast Mortar. The price differences in these weapons led to the following Gladius fleet sizes in the second test. 19 Gladius equipped with Beam Emitter MK1, 11 with Beam Emitter MK2, 15 with Blast Mortar MK1 and 13 with Blast Mortar MK2. Besides the listed weapons, the Gladius were equipped with split combat MK1 engines, combat MK1 thrusters and Teladi MK1 shields. As a ship crew, I used the regular Argon freighter crew, as a pilot, a common untrained pilot with 2 points in piloting and 1 in morale, which is likely already better than the standard pilot of a mass-produced ship. Now let's dive into the test, where I spawned 16 Xenon Ms, once in low tension mode and once in high tension mode, into the different armed fleets. The commanders of the test fleets were set to protect position, and the fleet subordinates to mimic the commander's behavior. To avoid trouble, the subordinates stop protecting the position in case the fleet commander is destroyed, and therefore not attacking any enemies proactively anymore. I parked the fleet commander away from the battle so he couldn't be shot. This means in total I used 20 Gladiuses per test, with the fleet commander parked away from the battle, and 19 ships mimicking the commander's protect position order, which also fought the 16 Xenon M. Now let's see how the different weapons performed in low tension mode. Here we see that the 19 Gladiuses with Blast Mortars handled the 16 Xenon M pretty fast, while the Gladiuses equipped with Beam Emitters fought with them for ages. In my test, the Blast Mortar MK2 destroyed all targets on average in 90 seconds. The MK1 version took a bit more than twice the time, which is expected due to the roughly doubled weapon output of the MK2 version. The Beam Emitter MK2 took 10 times the time of the Blast Mortar MK2, the time the MK1 Beam Emitter needed I didn't stop because neither side could take the upper hand in a reasonable time. I mean, already the MK2 version needed 50 minutes on average to destroy 16 Xenon Ms. So for me, at this point it is already clear that the Beam Emitter is not a practical weapon for fights in low tension mode. After we got a feeling about how fast these weapons are in destroying their targets, let's have a look at how many ships have survived. For comparison of the price effectiveness of each ship, I took a look at how many Gladiuses I lost and how many Xenon M's they destroyed. For this I calculated the average lost ships and multiplied them by the price. Then I divided the total lost value by the total amount of destroyed Xenon M's. This hopefully gives a good estimation of how cost effective each of the tested weapons is. At least this metric has the advantage that it still allows us to compare tests where the test fleet didn't manage to destroy all targets with tests where all targets were destroyed, since it takes both deployed and destroyed ships into account. Of course, this way to calculate the effectiveness is only meaningful in this context for comparison, because with changing enemy ships numbers, the numbers I lose will also change. In the Blast Mortar MQ2 test, during all 3 of my tests, all 19 Gladiuses survived. In the MQ1 test, I lost none to 1 Gladius on average, with a cost of roughly about 738,000 credits. This means for each destroyed Xenon M, I lost around 31,000 credits. In the Beam Emitter MQ2 scenario, I lost on average 2 Gladiuses, which means per destroyed Xenon M, I lost about 120,000 credits. The Beam Emitter MQ1 test I was aborted in low attention mode, because the errors took too long. Here I lost on average 4 Gladiuses and the Xenon lost 1 to 2 Ms. This resulted in a total loss of 1.45 million credits per destroyed Xenon M. Therefore, this test scenario can be summarized as that the Blast Mortar MQ2 variant is a pretty solid price-effective choice and is able to fight enemy fighter groups in a short time, while the Beam Emitter is not suited for low attention mode. Now let's have a look at how well the tested weapons were performing in high attention mode. Here, the effectiveness of both weapon types changed. Now we see that the Beam Emitter MQ2 shows the best results. In my test, all Gladius test fleets managed to destroy all Xenon M except the one with the Blast Mortar 1 equipped. The Beam Emitter MQ2 was slightly ahead of its MQ1 counterpart. I lost 10 with Beam Emitter MQ1 equipped Gladiuses in each test, and on average 5.4 Gladiuses equipped with MQ2 Beam Emitter. Taking the costs into account, I lost around 340,000 credits in the MQ2 and 375,000 credits in the MQ1 test per destroyed Xenon M, giving the MQ2 variant a slight edge over the MQ1 variant here. The Blast Mortar MQ2 showed large differences in its performance over the 3 tests, between only 3 up to 12 Gladius surviving the encounter, leading to an average loss of 11 Gladiuses with MQ2 Blast Mortar against 16 Xenon M. Per destroyed Xenon M, this means a total loss of around 574,000 credits. The Gladius equipped with Blast Mortar MQ1 didn't manage to destroy all Xenon Ms in any of the 3 tests. On average, they destroyed around 5 Ms, which leads to an average loss of 3 million credits per destroyed Xenon M in this scenario. To get a feeling about how fast each weapon can fight its targets, I also stopped the time. Here the Beam Emitter MQ2 was the fastest with slightly below 3 minutes, followed up by the MQ1 variant with around 5 minutes and the Blast Mortar MQ2 with around 6 minutes. Because the Gladiuses with MQ1 Blast Mortars were defeated in this test, it made no sense to compare the time until their defeat with the other times. To summarize the results up to here, before comparing fleets of equal costs, we saw that the Blast Mortar is a very effective weapon for fighter squadrons in low attention mode, while in high attention mode, the Beam Emitter is more effective. Fleets with Beam Emitters equipped need ages to fight enemy fighters in low attention mode, while the Blast Mortar is not suited for high attention mode. Although both MQ2 variants compared to their MQ1 variants in this test scenario are the more price efficient weapons, which might change when we have a look at the test results of the next test. Here, equipping ships with more expensive weapons means fewer ships overall, because this time we don't have a fixed ship number but a fixed credit budget. Here, as mentioned before, I took the 19 Gladiuses with Beam Emitter MQ1 as a price limit for how expensive each test fleet is. This reduced the fleet sizes down to 11 Gladiuses with MQ2 Beam Emitters, 15 Gladiuses with MQ1 Blast Mortars, and 13 Gladiuses with MQ2 Blast Mortars equipped. Of course, fewer ships means that we expect more losses, but in low attention mode, still only up to 1 Gladius with Blast Mortar MQ1 and MQ2 was lost. The average time to destroy Xenon Ms increased for both variants from 90 to 129 seconds and 187 to 208 seconds for the MQ2 and MQ1 variants respectively, due to the lower overall DPS on the battlefield. Despite the longer testing time in this test, I lost 3 Gladiuses with Beam Emitter MQ1, For comparison, in the previous test I lost 4 on average, and this time only 1 to 2, while the number of targets destroyed stayed around the same with 0 to 2. This I explain by the likelihood of random fluctuations, because the sample size from 3 tests is more about getting an idea rather than a solid statistic. In the beam emitter MQ2 test, the number of lost chips also stayed around the same, with up to 3. But here I didn't test until the end. This means the chips were lost in a shorter time, and in which also the number of destroyed chips was in one case 1, and in the other 2 cases 0. This means that due to the reduced fleet size, the 11 Gladiuses with beam emitter MQ2 wouldn't be able to destroy the opposing fleet in this test, and would get destroyed. Accordingly, in the test with equally expensive fleets, the effectiveness of Gladiuses equipped with blast mortar for both variants only decreased slightly, since on average only 1 ship more was lost. In this test, the beam emitter MQ1 scored slightly better, likely due to the random fluctuations, since the ship number stayed the same. The beam emitter MQ2 performed extremely worse, since more ships were lost in a shorter time window, and they were able to destroy only 1 Xenon M in 1 out of 3 tests. In high attention mode, things changed again. Here, the beam emitter MQ1 I didn't test again, because we already know that the test fleet destroyed all 16 Xenon Ms. The Gladius with beam emitter MQ2 equipped this time only destroyed in 1 out of 3 tests the 16 Xenon Ms and lost in the 1 other 2 tests. In the test where they destroyed all targets, 5 Gladius were lost. In the other 2 tests, where all Gladius were lost, they destroyed once 4 and once only 1 Xenon M. This led to an average loss of 1.2 million credits per destroyed Xenon M, while in the Gladius test with the MQ1 variant, only 375,000 credits were lost per destroyed Xenon M. Since the blast mortar previously showed worse results in high attention mode than the beam emitter, our expectation is met that the results should be worse. Accordingly here, the Gladius with blast mortar MQ2 couldn't destroy all 16 Xenon Ms. On average, in the MQ1 blast mortar test, 1.9 million credits were lost, and in the MQ2 blast mortar test, 3.7 million credits were lost per destroyed Xenon M, which leaves the beam emitter MQ1 out of the 4 tested weapons in high attention mode as the most price-effective weapon. To summarize our tests, in low attention mode, both blast mortar variants are very price-effective weapons, where the MQ2 variant is slightly more effective. In high attention mode, with a fixed number of ships, the beam emitter MQ2 was the most effective weapon, but when the numbers we can bring decrease because of budget limitations, it is more effective to bring more ships with only beam emitter MQ1 equipped. Overall, for the 2 tested weapons, it seems more price efficient but less fun efficient to play out fights between smaller fighters in low attention mode, due to the overwhelming performance of the blast mortar there. This summary still leaves me with the question how well fleets perform if you use both the M types in one fleet, which I also shortly tested after knowing the results. Maybe these opposing weapons can perform well in both modes when mixed up. So I made another test, where I tested 20 Gladiuses equipped with 2 blast mortar MQ2 and 2 beam emitter MQ1 each, and 1 with 10 Gladiuses equipped with blast mortar MQ2 and 10 Gladiuses with beam emitter MQ1 against 16M. Here, over 3 tests in high attention mode, I lost on average 7 Gladiuses in the test, where each was equipped with beam emitter or blast mortars. In the other test, where the Gladiuses were equipped with both 2 beam emitter and 2 blast mortar, I also lost roughly 7 Gladiuses on average, but had a larger spread between the losses in each test, reaching from 6 to 17. With only 3 tests, this larger spread is difficult to explain with randomness or with the different chip layouts, but still it gives a good enough idea of how well the fleets with mixed weapons are performing. For comparison reasons, in the last test, I made the mistake of using 1 chip more than in the previous ones, but I think the test with 1 chip more, where weapons are mixed up, still gives comparable results to the one where only beam emitter were used in high attention mode. The credit loss per destroyed Xenon M with 1 Gladius more was slightly less, with around 315,000 against 375,000 in the other test. In low attention mode, both test fleets performed roughly about the same, with 1 Gladius lost each test. This makes mixing up MQ1 beam emitters with blast mortars MQ2 in one fleet a solid choice, to cover both high and low attention modes in fighter vs fighter combat. I hope that showing the performance of the first two fighter weapons, the beam emitter and blast mortar, among many other choices, already helps you to choose the right weapon for your fighters. If you like to see the performance of other weapons in the future, click the subscribe button and like the video. And I'll see you next time and have a nice day.